185,000 soldiers could not defeat this angel. One of the greatest stories in the Bible. The Bible speaks of God's intervention in the affairs of his people, and the story of Hezekiah and his numerous enemies is one of the greatest examples of this. Hezekiah was a man in stark contrast to his terrible father, Ahaz. During his 8-year reign, he was granted the unusual honor of doing what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his ancestor David had done. It happened that in the 3rd year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. The name of his mother was Abi, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord according to all the things his father David had done. 2 Kings 18 verses 1-3. Hezekiah was one of the few kings who supported the elevated places of worship. He also cut down the Asherah poles and destroyed the bronze serpent that Moses had created centuries earlier, known as Nehushtan, which means bronze image. Numbers 21:8-9. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and it shall come to pass that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live." Moses made a bronze serpent and put it on a pole, and it happened that when a serpent bit someone, if that person looked at the bronze serpent, they would live. What a pity that this object, which God used to deliver the people, became a source of worship. For these and other reasons, Hezekiah is considered a king who stood out and was above the other kings in his adherence to God's commandments. 2 Kings 18 verses 4-5. He removed the high places, broke the sacred stones, cut down the Asherah poles, and smashed the bronze serpent that Moses had made. For up to that time, the Israelites had been burning incense to it and called it Nehushtan. Hezekiah trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. After reading about the unfaithfulness and atrocious acts of so many kings of Israel and Judah, King Hezekiah was a relief. His reign was a testament to his faithfulness to God's commandments. He prospered wherever he went because the Lord was with him. 2 Kings 18 verses 6-7. Because he was faithful to the Lord and did not turn away from him but kept the commandments that the Lord had given to Moses, the Lord was with him. He succeeded in everything he undertook. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him anymore. He defeated the Philistines as far as Gaza and its borders, from watchtower to fortified city. In the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, marched against Samaria and laid siege to it. They took it after 3 years. That is, Samaria was captured in the 6th year of Hezekiah, which was the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel. The king of Assyria deported the Israelites to Assyria and settled them in Hala, in Gozan on the Habor River, and in the towns of the Medes because they had not obeyed the voice of the Lord their God but had broken his covenant. They neither listened to nor carried out all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah's reign, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. So Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent a message to the king of Assyria at Lachish, "I have done wrong. Withdraw from me, and I will pay whatever you demand of me." The king of Assyria exacted from Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace. At that time, Hezekiah stripped off the gold with which he had covered the doors and doorposts of the temple of the Lord and gave it to the king of Assyria. The successor of Shalmaneser, the conqueror of Israel, was the Assyrian king against whom Hezekiah would have to fight. Unfortunately for Judah, things did not go as planned. Sennacherib attacked and conquered all the fortified cities of Judah, leaving only Jerusalem. It was at this moment that Hezekiah might have concluded that he had miscalculated the situation. He had previously admitted to Sennacherib that he had acted wrongly and offered a ransom to prevent his people from suffering the same fate as Israel. The demand was enormous, and Hezekiah sent all the silver and gold he could find, even stripping gold from the temple. However, things were about to get worse. God surrounded the Assyrians around Jerusalem to test Hezekiah's faith and demonstrate his own power to his people. Sennacherib did not believe that Hezekiah's ransom was sufficient but was looking for a reason to attack Jerusalem anyway. The Assyrian king sent a delegation and a massive army to Jerusalem to demand the city's surrender. Then Hezekiah, king of Judah, said to the king of Assyria at Lachish, "I have done wrong. Withdraw from me, and I will pay whatever you demand of me." The king of Assyria exacted from Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace. At that time, Hezekiah stripped off the gold with which he had covered the doors and doorposts of the temple of the Lord and gave it to the king of Assyria. Then the king of Assyria sent the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and the Rabshakeh with a large army from Lachish to King Hezekiah in Jerusalem. They went up and came to Jerusalem, and when they arrived, they stopped at the aqueduct of the upper pool on the road to the washer's field. They called for the king, and Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the palace, Shebna the scribe, and Joah, son of Asaph, the recorder, went out to them. The Rabshakeh said to them, "Tell Hezekiah, this is what the great king, the king of Assyria, says. On what are you basing this confidence of yours? You say you have counsel and might for war, but you speak only empty words. On whom are you depending that you rebel against me? Look now, you are depending on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff which pierces a man's hand and wounds him if he leans on it. Such is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who depend on him. But if you say to me, 'We trust in the Lord our God,' isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, 'You must worship before this altar in Jerusalem'? Now then, make a bargain with my master, the king of Assyria. I will give you 2,000 horses if you can put riders on them. How then can you repulse one officer of the least of my master's servants, even though you are depending on Egypt for chariots and horsemen? Furthermore, have I come to attack and destroy this place without the Lord? The Lord himself told me to march against this country and destroy it." 2 Kings 18 verses 26 to 30. The royal spokesman of Sennacherib laid out what he believed to be the facts to make Hezekiah and his people open their gates and surrender. First, Egypt was a useless ally that would not deliver them. This was true. Secondly, he was sure that the people of Judah had angered their God by destroying the places of worship, namely the high places and forbidden altars that Hezekiah had demolished. Of course, Hezekiah was right to demolish them. However, even the followers of the king probably questioned his actions in light of what was happening. Thirdly, the spokesman of Sennacherib reminded them that Judah's army was too weak to repel the Assyrian army. Given Hezekiah's effort to bribe Assyria, this was probably true as well. Lastly, he claimed that the Lord himself had told him to attack and destroy that land, essentially saying, "Hey, your God is on my side." This was a lie, but to the demoralized inhabitants of Jerusalem, it might have seemed he was right. After all, their northern neighbors had fallen to Assyria, and those same cruel conquerors were now at their gates. Then Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, Shebna, and Joah said to the Rabshakeh, "Please speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it. Do not speak to us in Hebrew in the hearing of the people on the wall." But the Rabshakeh said, "Has my master sent me only to your master and to you, and not also to the men sitting on the wall, who like you will have to eat their own excrement and drink their own urine?" Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out in Hebrew, "Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. This is what the king says, do not let Hezekiah deceive you. He cannot deliver you from my hand. Do not let Hezekiah persuade you to trust in the Lord when he says, 'The Lord will surely deliver us. This city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria.' Do not listen to Hezekiah. This is what the king of Assyria says, 'Make peace with me and come out to me. Then each of you will eat fruit from your own vine and fig tree and drink water from your own cistern, until I come and take you to a land like your own, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey. Choose life and not death. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for he is misleading you when he says, 'The Lord will deliver us.' Has the God of any nation ever delivered his land from the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Iva? Have they rescued Samaria from my hand? Who of all the gods of these countries has been able to save his land from me? How then can the Lord deliver Jerusalem from my hand? Of course, this was the crux of the entire situation. The Rabshakeh was saying what many were probably thinking. If other gods had not been able to protect their people from Assyria, how could the God of Israel, Judah, and Jerusalem do so? There was another claim that the Rabshakeh made that was true but not of ultimate concern to Hezekiah. If the people of Jerusalem did not surrender, they would face certain starvation. However, the Rabshakeh was lying when he claimed that the people would have peace if they opened the gates and accepted exile, and more importantly, he was wrong in claiming that the Lord could not deliver Jerusalem. But the people remained silent and said nothing in reply because the king had commanded, "Do not answer him." Then Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, the palace administrator, Shebna the scribe, and Joah, son of Asaph, the recorder, went to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and told him what the Rabshakeh had said. When King Hezekiah heard this, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and went into the temple of the Lord. He sent Eliakim, the palace administrator, Shebna the scribe, and the leading priests, all wearing sackcloth, to the prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz. They told him, "This is what Hezekiah says. This day is a day of distress and rebuke and disgrace, as when children come to the moment of birth and there is no strength to deliver them. It may be that the Lord your God will hear all the words of the Rabshakeh, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to ridicule the living God, and that he will rebuke him for the words the Lord your God has heard. Therefore pray for the remnant that still survives." The very fact that Hezekiah had called the prophet Isaiah into this situation shows his great faith. Most importantly, his statement here acknowledges that God has heard the Assyrians ridicule the Lord himself. It is hard to imagine the level of faith that was required to make such a statement. It is one thing to stand up for yourself against terrible odds, but it is quite another to stand up for your God. The next actions of Hezekiah, the prophecy of Isaiah, and the final result are well known. Isaiah said to them, "Tell your master, this is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid of what you have heard, those words with which the underlings of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Listen, when he hears a certain report, I will make him want to return to his own country, and there I will have him cut down with the sword." When the Rabshakeh heard that the king of Assyria had left Lachish, he withdrew and found the king fighting against Libnah. 2 Kings 19 verses 8 to 13. The Assyrians retreated but would return to attack Jerusalem again. This time, King Sennacherib himself sent a message to Hezekiah reminding him of the supposed futility of his hope in God. Hezekiah received the letter from the messengers and read it. Then he went up to the temple of the Lord and spread it out before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed to the Lord, "O Lord, God of Israel, enthroned between the cherubim, you alone are God over all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. Give ear, O Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see. Listen to the words Sennacherib has sent to insult the living God. It is true, O Lord, that the Assyrian kings have laid waste these nations and their lands. They have thrown their gods into the fire and destroyed them, for they were not gods but only wood and stone, fashioned by human hands. Now, O Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms on earth may know that you alone, O Lord our God." This prayer shows Hezekiah's realization that Assyria's conquest of Israel, as well as the other nations and cities, was part of God's greater plan. Hezekiah does not defend his actions but states his faith in the Lord. And it was in response to this prayer that the Lord, through Isaiah, issued his defense of Jerusalem. Then Isaiah, son of Amoz, sent a message to Hezekiah. "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I have heard your prayer concerning Sennacherib, king of Assyria. This is the word that the Lord has spoken against him. The virgin daughter of Zion despises you and mocks you. The daughter of Jerusalem tosses her head as you flee. Who is it you have insulted and blasphemed? Against whom have you raised your voice and lifted your eyes in pride? Against the Holy One of Israel." At the very moment, while the people of Judah were weakened and fearful and Sennacherib seemed invincible, The word of the Lord comes through Isaiah, calling Zion a virgin who despises Sennacherib. This makes sense as Zion is purified before the Lord. She mocks the Assyrians because, unlike their previous victims, she is the city of God and will be delivered. This was a clear statement to the people of Judah and Jerusalem, then and today, that no matter how high or low the odds, God always has his own plan for victory. By your messengers, you have heaped insults on the Lord, and you have said, "With my many chariots, I have ascended the heights of the mountains, the utmost heights of Lebanon. I have cut down its tallest cedars, the choicest of its pines. I have reached its remotest parts, the finest of its forests. I have dug wells in foreign lands and drunk the water there. With the soles of my feet, I have dried up all the streams of Egypt. Have you not heard? Long ago I ordained it. In days of old I planned it. Now I have brought it to pass that you have turned fortified cities into piles of stone. Their people, drained of power, are dismayed and put to shame. They are like plants in the field, like tender green shoots, like grass sprouting on the roof, scorched before it grows up. But I know where you stay and when you come and go and how you rage against me. Because you rage against me and your insolence has reached my ears, I will put my hook in your nose and my bit in your mouth, and I will make you return by the way you came. This will be the sign for you, O Hezekiah. This year you will eat what grows by itself, and the second year what springs from that. But in the third year sow and reap, plant vineyards and eat their fruit. Once more, a remnant of the house of Judah will take root below and bear fruit above. For out of Jerusalem will come a remnant, and out of Mount Zion, a band of survivors. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Therefore, this is what the Lord says concerning the king of Assyria. He will not enter this city or shoot an arrow here. He will not come before it with a shield or build a siege ramp against it. By the way he came, he will return. He will not enter this city, declares the Lord. I will defend this city and save it, for my sake and for the sake of David my servant. The Lord's defense of Jerusalem could not have been clearer. The Assyrian king and his servants insulted God with their arrogance, even if the power of Assyria had been ordained by God himself. And the next event was a stark illustration of this. That night, the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, there were all the dead bodies. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, broke camp and withdrew. He returned to Nineveh and stayed there. One day, while he was worshipping in the temple of his god Nisroch, his sons Adramelech and Sharezer cut him down with the sword, and they escaped to the land of Ararat. And Esarhaddon, his son, succeeded him as king. The implications of this final deliverance were clear. To God alone belong victory and glory, and his deliverance of Jerusalem was a decisive reminder of this truth.